Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Yes, on the left side. Welcome to the Local Comprehensive Planning Committee for January 23rd, 2025. It's nice to see everyone. Happy New Year. We haven't been physically together since October, so I hope everyone had a nice couple of months. And not that we haven't been working with planning staff, doing a great job, but I would like to call the meeting to order. Chair Wendy Northcross, and I would like to give a notice of recording. The meeting will be televised via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via the Government Access Channel live stream on the Town of Barnstable's website. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the committee must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. Thank you. Okay, first order of business, I would like to approve minutes from the September 26th and the October 30th meetings.
Is that motion?
Yes, please.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Cheryl and Lindsay. Okay, any discussion? Avery, you looked them over. They looked fine, according to our clerk. Great. I will take one vote to approve both sets of minutes. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay, let's do some public comment. We would be happy to hear from anyone in the audience.
Sign it, or do you care?
Oh, sure, sign it.
Okay. Well, there's no sign in.
Well,
Okay.
just tell us who you are.
Okay. My name is Bob Schulte from Centerville. I don't know if you have hard copies of the presentation that's going to be given later on, the PowerPoint presentation, but when you get to page 17, I have a comment regarding that. This was regarding the public comment on future land use maps. And if you look at the 3 points there, one of them is renewable energy, and it states as a goal to include in the plan, limit the impact of climate change by supporting offshore renewable wind energy. And I guess I start by questioning where that came from and object to the inclusion of that in the LCP plan. And looking through the 23 Excel spreadsheet pages, there was a single comment with 0 likes about someone commenting on wind. So I don't know where that came from. It certainly wasn't from the public comment. It may be the objective of somebody in town leadership or town management, but it did not come from the public. The town, as a matter of fact, has written to the state officials publicly opposing the Commonwealth Wind project that was proposed to land on Dowses, hardly a recommendation for offshore wind. There are also numerous vocal opposition groups throughout town, and in the last 2 years, if you paid attention to public comments, I would say that they are approximately 3-to-1 opposed to offshore wind from the public. So I object strenuously to the inclusion of renewable energy by supporting offshore wind in the LCP plan for our town for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else?
Good afternoon, John Crow, Town Council Precinct 5. I just have a comment about we're now going to be coming to the final draft very soon. I'd like to see that go back out to the public before it's pushed any further. The previous meetings, I know I went to one in Osterville, and basically it was a structured operation, a structured discussion where the public was asked to put on stickers on statements that were general statements about housing and a local comprehensive plan, and also put sticky notes about their little opinions. But I think it would be best, and it was also discouraged public comment at that time to, in order to do that exercise. I think going back to the public is extremely important on this for it to see it to go any further. And I think this time that the public should be free to speak their mind and give you all the feedback that is necessary. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. That's the intention. Thank you. Welcome, Mark.
Welcome, Mark. Hi. Walt Mayo, I'm from Centerville. This is my first meeting with the LCP, And I come to this because my daughter is in urban planning. She's worked with the city of Dallas. And I asked her to review the plan, and she was extraordinarily complimentary around the thoroughness, the process, the inclusivity. So hats off to James and the rest of the team here for putting together the very thoughtful plan. I would second the previous speaker's comment about the need to continue a very inclusive process. And I think in particular, one of the things my daughter told me, which has been borne out anecdotally in the data that I'm seeing here today, is statistically the most likely participants in this kind of planning process are white males over the age of 60. And being the third, and I'm not going to guess exactly how old you fellows are, but I would say of an age, it does suggest that any mechanisms for inclusion that we can offer that make it easier for underrepresented members of the community to participate should absolutely be considered. Simple things like, for example, providing an opportunity for daycare so that working mothers might be able to come, have somebody look over their children while they're part of this process. So I would just urge you to try to be as inclusive as possible and as thoughtful as possible. I noted that some of the comments that were very well structured, extraordinarily elaborate, tended to come from, not surprisingly, wealthier communities within the town of Barnstable. So the village of Osterville, for example, had a very, very exhaustive response. And that stands to reason. And finally, in terms of the whether and how you take a position on renewable energy and the impact of climate change, it is certainly something that we cannot avoid. And I think being forthright around how we intend as a community to address this challenge is imperative. However challenging and difficult those conversations might be, we need to bring them to the fore. This is coming from somebody who very much believes in the science associated with climate change. So thank you very much again. I would like to compliment this organization and James for the work that they've done to date.
Could I ask you your name again, please?
Sure, it's Walter Mayo, M-A-Y-O, with no connection that I know of to the many Mayos of Cape Cod.
Probably
Clinic.
Yeah,
It's probably a connection.
we would have to go back a good long way as far as I can tell.
16 generations,
Yeah.
maybe. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, and I think we will address some of the comments through our meeting process this afternoon, this evening. Hello, Susan. How are you? Hello, Mark. Okay. Any other public comment? We're good, okay. So topics for discussion tonight, we're going to review the final future land use maps. We're going to discuss the initial full draft of the local comp plan, including the action plan. And we're going to discuss opportunities for more public input, including Zoom sessions for staff to discuss questions and comments from the public, the online tools that we have, and the physical outreach into the villages that we'll be conducting in March. So we'll give you a sense of that. And then the committee schedule to the end. I mean, we will be going into we started in the summer of 22, made it through 23, made it through 24, and it's now 2025. So at some point, we have to give birth to this plan because it'll be time to change it again if we don't. So we don't want to rush it, but we want to be thorough. So, James, would you like to talk to us about the final land use maps?
And if I could also point out that the goal was originally to actually have it by 2020, sometime in 2025. So in a way, we're kind of on.
We're
on
okay?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
good. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Good evening, everybody. Jim Kupfer, Director of Planning and Development, and absolutely, I would love to talk to you about the future land use map and the draft plan that you have before you. So welcome back. It's been some time. We got through the holidays, and during those holidays, Kate Maldonado behind me has been working feverishly to get you that draft that you have in front of you today. It's a large document with a lot of information in there, and all the hard work that you guys have done over the past 2+ years. So as the chair mentioned, we'll review where we've been because we always like to start our meetings with how we've got here through where we've been, and then ultimately we're going to end with where we're headed. In between, we will review that future land use map and then discuss the plan itself, maybe any early comments that the committee has, and then ways we can engage with each other through the next month or so before we go back out to the public for a very robust public outreach, just like we started the plan. So, the plan itself, we started with our existing conditions, phase 1, reviewing all the information, data, departments, et cetera, that we have here in the town of Barnstable, and that created that phase 1 visioning, engagement, and existing conditions document. The vision took quite some time. We utilized all of that public outreach, the about year or so public outreach, crisscrossing through town, listening to our residents and developing out that ultimate vision statement that you see there, and that you guys have probably read too many times by now, and you'll find that in our draft document. That vision statement really guides us through phase 2. Phase 2, we start to develop out our different chapters, our land use, our housing, our natural resources, infrastructure, facilities, economic development, cultural heritage, and design. Again, thinking back to all of our public outreach, our existing conditions, and ultimately where we landed on a vision statement. We started to listen to some further expert presentations and develop out our goals and strategies that find them in our current draft of our local comprehensive plan. Those goals and strategies also helped guide our future land use map. Our future land use map, last we met, we had developed out the future land use map, taking in all the public comment that we received, both in person, via email, on our engagement tool online. We developed out the public comment spreadsheet. Again, it's 69 comments online, 30 submitted via email. And we do have some that we talked about much at our last time we met, a lot of the bullet points in terms of kind of overall strategies. Again, as we mentioned at the last meeting, really what it seemed to boil down to, and absolutely noted, Mr. Schulte, on the renewable energy. We'll take a much harder look at that and provide the board with proper guidance on that. What we heard from the last meeting to now was that we have a fairly sophisticated zoning and land use map to date. We have our growth incentive zone. We have our commercial districts. We have, places where we want to incentivize this growth near our infrastructure. And then we have, in balance, our resource protection area. So our left side of our community where the hatch is, that's our resource protection area. And the area in purple, our growth incentive zone. We have, based on the comments that we received, we broke out that future land use map from our last meeting to 2 future land use maps. One identifying regulatory areas and one identifying study areas. Those regulatory areas are things that we want and how we want to phrase our development moving forward over the next 10 years, much of which, again, stays the same. We keep our growth incentive zone, trying to revitalize essentially downtown Hyannis, keeping our regional economic center, that is essentially the regional economic center for Cape Cod. And then we identify those village centers in a more profound way in terms of historic preservation and wanting to see us preserve the character of those village centers as we have over the past many decades. We also, in the middle there, the link between the growth incentive zone and the resource protection area. You find West Main Street, which originally previous iterations had it as a commercial corridor, and what this committee had offered was, or suggested was downgrading that essentially to more of a light commercial, so not to overburden an already overextended corridor. Together with the secondary map for future land use, we look at our different study areas, and the only difference here is one that we broke it out into a second map, but also we have a more balanced area for study where we don't pinpoint the exact location of parcels, making it so that once we get into the action item of actually truly studying that area, we're not restricted to very specific parcels today, but we look at it more holistically once we get in there and say, okay, we need to maybe include a little bit to the north, a little bit to the south, and really those four, to remind the committee and the public, those four study areas are one of which seems to be rising to the top is the Independence Park and what the future of that park holds for the next 10 years. So that's the blue. The yellow is the Cape Cod Community College area, and that's the yellow. And again, that was a similar conversation where we're saying, well, we don't want to identify just the community college. You know, we got to think about down gradient. We got to think about over near the bus area. We need to think about, maybe properties that the town owns. The purple is that connection between the two and how that might get impacted because of Independence Park or the community college. Ooh. And then lastly, again, that West Main Street area from West Main Street and sandwiched with Falmouth Road and what could be the future of that area. Much of that is predominantly the school area, but things such as workforce housing came up. And maybe other light commercial uses that could be the future of that area. But again, that's something that, as you'll see in the action plan, is a priority action for study for the next 10 years. So before I move into the plan, any questions, comments on the future land use map?
I got one. Yes, Jim, do you envision those would be done in-house, or would they be consultants brought on to look at that, or how are you kind of putting that together?
Yeah, for the study areas, I would imagine we would want consulting assistance for probably once we develop out a scope. We would likely do a scope in-house to understand what we're truly examining, and then we will determine what specialties are necessary. But we have done a number of studies in-house, but depending on the specialties that are necessary, we might need to consult out.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. So when we eventually get to those land use areas, will the town identify at some point the town-owned parcels?
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually has come up a number of times separate from this process. That is one of the priorities of the town council that has been raised as reutilizing town-owned parcels of land. So I have been working with asset management on understanding kind of our inventory of parcels, but it's a little bit nuanced in that we have a large list of properties, but for many of you that are part of the CPC and others, you'll know that many of these properties are restricted in some form, whether that's open space or recreation, et cetera. So that inventory quickly dwindles when we dig a little deeper into the restrictions that are in place. But we are looking at that.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, are
could
you
be part of the
suggesting
study.
the town-owned parcels could be overlaid on?
Yeah, either
The
overlaid
areas?
just for use, because oftentimes, we may have parcels that, might appear to have less use for the town, but might have more use for private, and maybe there's a flip-flop there, maybe there's some private lots that they would be willing to, in exchange for, you never know. Sometimes people have different uses, or different organizations have different uses, so perhaps there can be swaps or purchases or things like that that would be to the benefit of town and its citizens.
Maybe even just doing it within the study areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good idea. Any other comments about the land use maps? think the idea to break these out instead of continually overlaying the maps makes it a little more clear what the intent is, right? Have you had any other feedback? As we
for
put these
the
up on the
not-
website?
But we've had some minimal additional public comment, but nothing of substance that differs from our previous public comment. We also are thinking or suggesting to the committee that the future land use maps live just within the action plan, as that is kind of the forward thinking. Originally, in many plans, it lives within the land use chapter, but the land use chapter itself really is targeting kind of where we are today and some of the nuances there, whereas or at least our suggestion is to place it in the action plan so that it's your guiding geography when you're opening up that action plan. You understand that, and then you dive into the actions and strategies there.
Any other comments? Oh, I keep on moving?
All right. So now before you, or you've recently received, is the draft local comprehensive plan. We marked in 2025, hoping that that's the end year. And so before you is this plan with a few sections that we still need to insert in. Obviously, the executive summary we haven't finalized yet. We have to fill in some pieces for the action plan. But by and large, the plan is in fairly good order. There's a number of images we want to get out in the spring when the flowers are blooming and all that to really beef up the document. But the substance in there is for this committee to review, and then ultimately, once we feel it's in a good place, we being the committee, we will bring it out to the public for their review. So the parts of the plan. So we have obviously our introduction, existing conditions, key issues and needs, target action plans, and a fairly in-depth appendix. The introduction is broken up, so we have our acknowledgments as you typically see in a plan. We thought it would be good to have a letter from the committee. I initially suggested a letter from the chair, but Wendy thought it was much more appropriate from the committee as a whole. So we certainly will work on a draft for your consideration. We have the community vision statement, which has been set for some time. We will have an executive summary, and then we have our community engagement and process that we've had again for some time. So a couple of these sections are being pulled from phase one and put into the plan in their proper locations. So it doesn't need as much attention as some of the other sections that you'll find here. In the existing conditions, as has been for some time now that you've had before you, and that's been helping us guide us through in the updated chapters, we have the natural systems, built systems, and community systems. Those are how the existing conditions section is broken down. And then so you go beyond the existing conditions, and now we're into the chapters of the key issues and needs. And that's what we've been working on over the past year now, in the flip boards and the comments on strategies and goals. You develop out the land use, housing, natural resource infrastructure facilities, economic development, and cultural heritage and design. Here we have in each chapter, you'll see a nice spread for the chapter heading. We try to, and I would recommend if the committee would like to pay close attention to the vision statement bullets that are on each header. So that is staff that has took the vision statement and copied and pasted what we felt was applicable to the given chapter. So each one of the chapters will have applicable vision statement bullets listed on the front cover. Please take a close look at that, and if you see any that might be, maybe a stretch, or hey, we should really be adding this bullet or that bullet, please let us know. That would be extremely helpful. Each section has a fact sheet, so we've taken again from the existing conditions, from the needs assessment, from our public comment. We've dove in a little deeper into the different data points, and we have a fact sheet that goes to each one of our sections that you'll see there. I will note that this is one of the key parts that we think we might be pulling out for and suggesting the committee develop out a slightly slimmed down version. Once it's all said and done, once we have something that looks like an adopted plan, we could suggest potentially a slimmed down version where we have maybe the executive summary, data sheets, and the action plan, for instance, and maybe some other key parts, but try and truncate it so that we have a digestible, smaller version for the public to consume. Each section has various maps that are applicable to the plan and to the sections. You'll note that each of the maps are in the back of each section. Please take a look at that. Provide guidance as to whether or not that seems to work for the committee. Initially, we had all the maps in the back of the document, and we thought that was just too much flipping back and forth, so we pulled them forward into each one of the applicable sections. We could further move those and refine that as the committee sees fit. Again, in each one of the sections, you'll see all the goals and actions. So this is what the committee's really been developing out over the last year or so. And so each one of these goals and actions for each one of the sections are shown within the document. And then we pull those, each one of these, to an overall action plan that you'll see here momentarily. So as we move beyond, so we have now our introduction section, we have our existing conditions section, we have our key topic areas with our data templates and our goals and actions. And now we're finalizing the targeted action plan. These are, again, taking our goals and actions and putting into one solid action plan document that hopefully is going to be utilized often. Those goals and actions are coupled with implementation strategies, and it looks something like this. So each one, so at the end of the plan, we have really our action plan, the meat of the plan, hopefully, where we identify each one of the goals. So in the natural resource action plan, we have the goal one and an action underneath it. And then as we continue to develop out this plan and finalize this plan, we'll start highlighting the time frame, so whether that's short-term, medium-term, long-term, responsible parties, whether it's a board, committee, commission, maybe it's the DPW, whomever that might be, potential funding sources, so any known sources that we might be able to identify now, or if maybe that's through the capital improvement plan, that could be identified there. And then overlapping with other chapters, we thought that was important to understand that there is a lot of overlap. Excuse me. And so we'll work to identify that there. So we go through each one of the sections through this action plan. And that really is this plan hopefully is something that the town can refer back to or at least annually. We think that this could be something that in the implementation strategy, something that when the town council is looking at the strategic plan, they could identify priorities. Same thing with the planning board, annually could identify priorities of land use matters. And this could be something that can help guide staff often. Lastly, we have the appendix. This, we put together a glossary of key terms that we thought was important. We put summaries of all the expert presentations that you've heard over the year, and all of our sources are listed to the back there. So again, that completes the full document in draft form, obviously, for your consideration. Introduction, existing conditions, key issues and needs, targeted action plan, and the last appendix. So our thought here this evening, simply, I know this is our first discussion of the matter, the first time you've really had a chance to hold on to it and look at it. If there's any early comments you would like to offer, any guidance would be greatly appreciated. Really, the thought on our end was that it gives you an opportunity to understand how this was all put together. We have 2 meetings, which I don't want to spoil Kate's part of the presentation here, but we have 2 meetings here in February where we hope that the committee can offer suggestions and red lines back to staff so we can bring those all together and go page by page here in public on those red line comments so that we can have a draft that the committee feels comfortable with going out to the public, and then we can really get the public feedback moving forward. So happy to take any early comments to date, whether that is substance or format or what have you, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, I have one. I just wanted to say, I know everyone on the committee has put a lot of time into it, but Jim, the amount of work that your department and yourself, of course, and the others that have worked to put this together is fantastic. Just wanted to make sure
Thank you.
that was stated.
And
Kate.
We were, Kate's daughter's in college now.
Right.
She was pregnant when we started. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so thank you. So I know that we have had access to this in various forms through the last couple of months, and several of you have done a great job providing some comments to staff, which is terrific. I'm just going to try to reinforce that the committee would really like to have you go through this. It's winter on Cape Cod, just get some cocoa. But go through it and try to get comments to the staff by the 7th of February, then they can incorporate it into the edited version, and then we can have a red line copy in mid-February when we sit here and go through. So kudos to Bob Twiss, who unfortunately is homesick. He sent lengthy comments. Lindsay, you sent voluminous comments. I know, Avery, you've done a good job submitting that. I've made a couple of slight comments, but if anyone wants to say anything now, it's a perfectly acceptable time to. Susan.
I just, I've been really, really busy at home the last few weeks and a couple months, so I have not had a chance to read all the way through it, but I plan to do that. And what I have read, I've been really impressed with, so thank you, James, and everybody else who's worked on it, Kate. And when I started reading it, I thought, well, I guess my comments pertain to climate change, which Mr. Mayo alluded to and made me think that should we be making some sort of statement at the beginning about climate change? Because we do mention it in the various sections as we go along, but there's no statement in the beginning. And I think given the importance of what's happening and what we're going to need to do and think about what we need to do, I think it might behoove us to do that. And I know that's not going to be easy, but I'm going to be looking at that all the way through as I read through it.
Can I add? Cheryl? I actually like that idea. If for no other reason, when we started this back in 2020, 2022, sorry, we had the 2010 version, and in reading that, it was a matter of trying to remember where in 2010, basically where the town was on it. But by putting a statement in the beginning with regard to the climate change, it provides, whenever they get to doing the next one, basically some of the things that we were focusing on were pertinent at the time that this was put together. I like that idea.
Could I point out in our vision statement, which we did labor greatly over developing, and there was a lot of public input on that, the fourth bullet down, it's page 11 in the document, the fourth bullet down says, prepare and adapt to climate impacts, including sea level rise. This is part of our vision for what this plan would do. And then the next bullet says, reduce our environmental footprint by investing in low carbon energy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and better managing our waste. So would you be looking for something beyond that, Susan, or?
I would be looking for something when you actually start reading the plan or the executive summary or whatever, that states that that's something that the town, is going to be focused on, really needs to be focused on, et cetera. And I think that back when we discussed that for the vision statement, there was a lot of controversy about what we should put in, and we could have put in a stronger statement, but we didn't.
Katya?
Yeah, I seconded or what you said, and I think it's important, but also that we, as a group, did work to be inclusive, to be equity, and we had opportunities for people to participate because it was translated to other languages, so that the continuity there, it is important. But we already started. I feel welcome. This is my first time on this, participating here, and to be listening and see in a different perspective from someone that is, I came to this country when I was 35 years old already, so my mind is so to be part of this. So I felt that highlighted that we are, the journey is to be inclusive and respect our diversity.
Okay, gotcha. Amanda?
I also support what Sue is saying about making a little bit more of a, including the actual phrase climate change in the executive summary. I know we did labor over the vision statement, and there was a lot of back and forth about whether it would be that actual phrase would be included. But I want to just note that every single town department that came in that has any interaction with the environment or the built environment has mentioned climate change as a concern. And that came after we went through the vision statement. So I think it would make sense to include it in the summary.
Okay. Any other comments about this or any other part of the 300 and some odd pages? 344.
I know we read the original one, but it seemed to be, what, half the size of this?
Microphone.
Pardon? Oh. I know we read the original one from 2010, well, the 2010 version anyway. Jim, you can probably answer this, because when I read that, it seemed to be only a fraction of this and not nearly as much in depth. How did they compare?
Yeah, well, so we have, I would say this document does have more information, but less in terms of priority action. So I think the goal when we set out for this was to not overwhelm the community with priority actions moving forward over the next 10 years. We didn't quite achieve the goal of maybe 10 or so, but one of the suggestions we were going to have once we get a little bit closer was, once we have a final document, maybe one of the last objectives of the committee is to the top 10 priority or something of that nature. But that's something we can talk about at a future meeting, certainly.
I think the plan that we inherited, or the previous plan, had over 300 to-do items which largely fell on town departments.
Yeah,
and I think that was the concern, that was just onerous and not achievable. So we were trying to carve out the most accessible and the most important, and unfortunately, there's a
believe it
lot
was-
that's important.
It was 300 just for the Department of Public Works,
Oh.
I believe.
And to that point, though, in terms of the sheer size, we're cognizant of that. And as I mentioned earlier, we're thinking about a way to have a slimmed-down version once we get to a final product that could be more digestible for the public. And we're also thinking about an interactive method. We've recently did a story map online for our Hyannis Harbor resiliency plan, and that's been well received. So we're thinking about ways in which we can adapt maybe this to that as well once we have a finished product.
Oops, I don't know what I'm taking. As you already know, because I sent you my comments, to me, the biggest problem with it is usability. I mean, back to climate change, if we all print these out, it's crazy. But I would I really want to see it reordered. We do not need to review the existing conditions before we learn what the plan is about. I feel like, even listing all the meetings, who cares? Put them on the back of the plan for if someone needs to do that deep dive, they're able. The data's there, but I want to see the first 30 pages of this plan be what you keep talking about, which is what you say it's for the public, it's for everybody, the users. I want the meat and potatoes to be right up in front, and so that, people can actually know what we're trying to say before they get bored to death. Thanks.
I'm assuming that the end version is going to be bound, is it not?
Probably digital,
We'll certainly make
right?
some bound copies, certainly, yeah.
But they're used digitally, so that it has to be usable digitally.
Searchable, and, yeah. So you want the beef right up front.
So we can certainly provide an option for your consideration of that as well.
Yeah.
We can certainly do that.
Yeah.
I think also, just for ease of use, and maybe this runs along the same, is that potentially we could look at, when we're looking at the targeted action plan and the individual targets, that we maybe could add a legend or a key that maybe indicated, kind of like when you're looking to go out to dinner. More dollar signs is more expensive. Or maybe we have one that is, one is a immediate actionable item, or maybe one is a more capital intensive item. Maybe we can come up with a couple of, characters that might represent that. So if somebody were visually looking at a list, you could look at that list and say, oh, this is an easy, this is a relatively low cost item. It is something that is actionable now. It's also actionable by town council, or it's actionable by citizens. Maybe that's something that might visually help people get through the material, so that if they are interested, they can then reference a page, a section of the that they may have personal interest in.
Absolutely, we could take a look at that.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I just want to say that I think Shay has done a great job with the graphic design, and I love the infographics, and those one-pagers are such a user-friendly element to it that I think is very contemporary, and I applaud that.
Or possibly with I like your idea of some sort of symbols or something, but maybe not so much for the cost, because that's going to be varying from year to year and as things happen, but possibly with regard to importance would be something I would suggest.
That's objective. Cost is more fact.
True.
And it's relative. Cost is just relative.
Jim, but this is the plan for the town.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole part about having a piece that a citizen could pick up and move with is intriguing too, citizen actions. Maybe that's a whole little handout or something, I don't know.
Yeah, we can think about that slimmed down version and how it can interact with all of our, our village associations, with our general public, with our boards, committees, and commissions, absolutely.
Okay.
I think the goal, from what I've heard at least, from the committee's goal, is to make it not sit on a shelf. So whatever way we can do that to make it usable for everybody, we can certainly investigate that.
And to add on to that, I think it's important to also look at, what is the demographic immediately going into the future. We're going to have a lot of retired individuals, men and women, that have high skill levels, still current knowledge in different applications, and we should be able to identify for them areas in which they may be able to participate and add value.
Cheat sheet, if you want to get involved, here's some ways to do it. That's a good idea. Yeah. I'm making notes. Anybody else? Jennifer, you've been awfully quiet. Sorry.
Microphone on. I just want to say thank you, because it's an awful lot of work putting all this together. And I agree with Avery's points about getting the most important stuff up front. The meeting dates and other information is certainly important, but really getting to the heart of the matter to capture people right away. And I love the option of what we can do as residents within the town of Barnstable, because it really is, when it gets down to it, it's all of us who live and work here and care about where we live. And so thank you to all of you for all your hard work, and to everyone who's commented throughout the entire process and who continues to comment throughout the entire process, and to members of the committee who are all volunteers here. Kudos to everyone for this giant effort, and looking forward to more outreach to come. So.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank all of you, because it is a labor of love. I think we're here because we love our community and we want it to be the best that it can be. And it's very dynamic, and it's very complex, and it's very important work. So thank you all. Thanks for people for showing up in the middle of winter, and for a great staff, and for the support. I think what we want to do is make sure that we have a lot of opportunity for public comment from here on out. We have talked about having an open mic night, to speak to the concern about some prior public feedback sessions, which were structured by nature as part of the process, and the fairness across all the villages when we went out to the villages. But we also, and we've had things digitally, and we could take email, you can walk into the building. But going forward, Jim, why don't you just give us a sense of how we can feed back as a public, how we can continue to feed back into this process from here out.
Are you going to go into the later slides, or are you going to? Okay. I think Kate's going to
Kate,
dive
can you
into
do
that, if that's okay.
Hey, Kate.
Good evening, Kate Maldonado, Senior Planner. I'm going to touch on a few things before I get into that, but I promise that's in the slide deck. So as staff, we continue to prioritize any opportunities for outreach. Again, this has been a long process. Anything that we can do among our community, and as Katya mentioned, we make it a priority to make sure the materials are translated. So we were able to take advantage of the town census. Each year, you can include, and a department can include a insert within that census. So we grabbed onto that opportunity, and within the census that went out, I believe the end of December, there was this insert to remind members of the community, of the public, of this important effort, noting that a draft would be coming soon with a QR code to the web page. And then our graphic designer helped us to incorporate those icons for the topics. So hopefully, people are getting interested. Maybe they're interested in housing or natural resources, but it gives them an quick overview of all the topics that this important plan covers, and introducing that, promoting that it'll be available for draft review.
Did you all get your census mail?
Yes.
From the town?
Yeah, but I didn't remember seeing that. But it was a QR code.
I know Jim received it, so.
I got it.
Made sure that it went out. So hopefully you received it. If not,
Make sure you fill that census in so you can vote.
yeah.
I filled the census in, I just don't remember the insert.
You may have Christmas on your mind. I think it was end of December, but again, we really try to take advantage of any opportunities to help spread the word, to make sure that the public is informed. I'm going to touch a little bit more details on the schedule, but we did want to know, so we're looking at least the next month, continuing into February, continuing this dialogue. We really want to take the time to get all of your comments, review your comments collectively, so that way as a group we can finalize a draft for the public. So it likely will be another month of that process meeting with you to work on that effort. And during that time, we'd also like to offer Zoom sessions with staff. So if, as you're reading the plan at home, you come across something, maybe a technical question or comments that you really want to dive into, please, we don't have a schedule for the Zoom sessions because we want it to be as open and as flexible as possible. So if you would like to schedule a Zoom session with staff, please reach out to myself and I'll find a time that's available for all parties. We can do Zoom or either in person, but just an opportunity in advance of the meetings to sit down with staff if you have any particular questions or comments about the plan, that we can help give you responses to keep this process moving. I also did want to mention, with the committee's consensus, we have staff, and in talking with LCP leadership, we have proposed reaching out to our town councilors to also offer the opportunity to sit down with staff one-on-one with the draft plan to try to get some feedback from councilors now and keep them engaged and informed of this process, because ultimately this plan will go before town councilors. So we really want to make sure that our committee and councilors, this is really a time to get as many comments as possible so that we can collectively work to refine the draft that will ultimately present to the public. So next steps and meetings. Really appreciate all of the wonderful comments that you guys have given staff. I'm really appreciative of our team as well. We have a great team, but I'd also like to say thank you for all the time that you have collectively dedicated. We really appreciate it that we couldn't do this without you. That said, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, maybe, a handful of more meetings. Obviously, the schedule is dependent on how long it'll take us to go through the plan together, how much public comment we'll receive, but we are getting towards refining this draft local comprehensive plan. Thursday evenings, there has been some conflict with scheduling, so we sat down with communications because we want to make sure that we have a set time and date to proceed with meetings for this committee. So we've proposed shifting it to Tuesday evenings, the second and the fourth Tuesday, starting at 6 p.m., shifting that time back a little bit. That said, I know I just spoke with Cheryl before the meeting. I thought communications, that we had collectively looked at the calendar, but it looks like Human Resources meets, I'm sorry.
The Human Services meets on the second Tuesday of every month at 5:30 in the Selectmen's Conference Room. So I can do the fourth Tuesday, but the second Tuesday, since I'm chairman of Human Services Committee, it makes it rather difficult.
Sure.
If we can do a different time, it would be helpful for me anyway.
Yeah, we'll go back to the drawing board. Unfortunately, there's a lot of standing meetings and other nights, and members are on other boards, committee, and commissions like Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals. So we'll secure that fourth Tuesday and then work to maybe see if there's another evening, but trying to meet twice a month to keep this conversation and this momentum going. So
Kate, just because we're being televised and recorded, just explain why we have this constraint. I mean, what we have, the things that we have to provide so that the public can physically be with us, right? We have to be in a room with handicap accessibility, telecommunications.
yeah, this room
Right.
is essentially
Yeah.
ideal because of the audio system for recording and so that it can be broadcast live. And we did try to look at all of the standing meetings. Unfortunately, there's so many boards and committees and commissions in Barnstable. So we'll look to see if there's an alternative for the second Tuesday, but expect an email. We'll try to find
So
a
that's
date
our
so we can meet
constraint.
twice
It's not like we
monthly.
can just zip over to a building that's not a town
Right.
building to
Right.
and meet, so.
Is there anybody else that has a conflict on the Tuesday?
We've been trying to poll everybody, so if you have a conflict, speak now or for.
I mean, if we've got a majority and a quorum,
Yeah.
we should be able to
Yeah,
move
I think
forward.
we're still, you didn't get a total response to the last poll.
Right, yeah, I sent
Yeah.
around a doodle poll. I know a few members responded. I know we've sent a lot of emails, though, so that's why I figured we'd present it, but let us know after this if you have a conflict with the fourth Tuesday of the month, and then we'll see if there's another evening. It's just difficult with existing standing meetings and with members on other boards, committee, and commissions. Regardless, we'll follow up on the scheduling, but trying to figure out the best way to schedule meetings moving forward, so that way we have the space and we can have quorum.
So this meeting schedule is just for February, or are we going to try to
Yep, so,
hold this through March? I mean, in March, we do a whole different thing, right?
yep, so I'll walk through that. If we do carry those Tuesday meetings, so February, it would be the second and the fourth Tuesdays in February, and the objective of those meetings would be to continue this dialogue. We'll redline the document from the comments that you've discussed this evening, from the comments that we've received from committee members, and present it back to you. And then, so that would be February, and that time, you'd also be able to reach out for Zoom sessions with staff, and with the objective of presenting a draft plan to the public early March, and then dedicating the month of March to community meetings, making sure that we'll continue on the strategies we've used to date, and certainly we welcome any other ideas to make sure they're as inclusive as possible, but the objective being we dedicate a whole month to public outreach, again, dependent on making sure that the month of February is sufficient to coordinate all of the committee's comments for the draft plan, but assuming that we can get through comments over the course of 2 meetings, then March would be dedicated to the public. And then April, we'd regroup. Staff will take the comments from the public and make sure that the committee receives all of them for your consideration. And we'd work through each of the chapters, looking at suggested edits, comments from the public, and ultimately vote on the chapters to be submitted to planning board and to town council. That we're proposing 2 meetings, but again, dependent on how long it takes, how many comments we receive, but the time would be allocated to working through the comments received from the public. And then potentially in May, presenting the plan to planning board and town council, again, subject to how long it takes to go through the comments. But as mentioned, light at the end of the tunnel, we'd be meeting in February, March, potentially going out to the public, April, working through the public comment, and then by May, we could have a final plan to present to planning board and town council.
How involved is the meeting with the town council? Is it just a ceremonial handing over the baton of the document, or is it a back and forth?
Yeah, so it really is going to depend on the process between now and then. I think that's the importance of having them engaged now, the town council being engaged now, and getting them a draft so they can really weigh in and provide some comments back to the committee. So hopefully nothing in that document is a surprise by the time we get there in May, and we have support from all of our boards, committees, and commissions by that point. So hopefully by that time it's it's a celebration, but only time will tell, and we will be working hard to get to that point.
Cool. Okay, anything else for the committee?
I think that's all we have for this evening for you.
Okay. Committee, any final comments? Is there any general correspondence? None? You know when our next meetings are? Is there any other final public comment? Everyone's good? Okay.
You want a motion to adjourn?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.